This is Meet the Author, and I'm your host, Tigner Rand. Meet the Author is part of Rolling Out's book club series where I talk with authors about their new books, projects, and of course, what inspires them to write. Joining me today is Jayne Allen, Esquire. Ms. Allen is a graduate of Duke University Howard Law School, but she also uses her unique experience as an attorney to help craft transcultural stories to write novels. One of the things about her unique writing is that she covers women issues such as workplace and career dynamics, race, fertility, modern relationships, and mental illness. Jayne's debut novel is Black Girls Must Die Exhausted, which is the first book of a 3-book series about modern womanhood in which a young Black woman must rely upon her courage, laughter, and love and support of her lifelong friends to overcome unexpected setbacks through her life. The main character, who is Tabitha Walker, is a Black woman with a plan to have it all. At 33 years old, the checklist for her life and her dreams are well underway, from education, good job, down payment for a new house, dating married material, with a covenant position with a local news reporter, the paper perfect boyfriend. Tabitha has it all, so it seems. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Jayne Allen to the show today. How you doing today, Jayne?
I'm doing wonderful. Thanks for having me.
Before we get started, I want to let everyone know that your debut novel, Black Girls Must Die Exhausted, is currently available on blackbookstore.com.
And yes, it is.
I've had an opportunity to read most of it. Very interesting book. Before we dive into a few questions, can you read a passage from any part of the book that really is the part that really spoke to you in the process of writing a book? It could be anywhere from the beginning, middle, or end, to just give us a snippet of what is inside between the covers.
Sure. There's a section. So when I was writing this book, I wanted to explore the experience of what it means to be a Black woman in contemporary society and not make the story about race. You know, I think we've heard so many kind of struggle stories about race, and we've seen a lot of slavery narratives. And so I wanted to explore what, this experience might be like and have a main character who, as a Black woman, can give words to that experience. And she happens to have a white grandmother. And in this novel, I used fiction to craft situations and experiences and conversations that don't normally happen in everyday life, but probably should. And in this scene that I'm going to read from, Tabitha and her grandmother are asking each other, what does it feel like to be the race that society has assigned you? So again, Tabitha's grandmother is white, Tabitha is Black, and they have a very close relationship, but they've never thought to even discuss this or ask this of each other before. So I think I'm going to read the part where Tabitha talks about what she experiences and how she feels as a Black woman and what that feels like.
Okay.
So
perfect.
Her grandmother has asked her, what does it feel like to be Black? How does it feel? I continued, trying to think and still talk. I'd honestly never considered the question before, not while living it. I can tell you that your thought about it being exhausting, that sounds about right sometimes. A lot of times it does feel exhausting because everything bad in society is about you. But when it comes to the good, nothing is for you. I feel like I'm not enough and too much all at the same time. And then other times being Black feels exhilarating because every good thing that happens feels like a victory, even the small things, because you're constantly reminded that you're an other. So whatever good happened in spite of. So there's celebration, there's joy. I paused just to think. It felt so complicated. I pushed myself to find more in the deeper parts, hidden in the folds of my spirit, the secrets. And emptiness is there too, a different kind from what you described though, a need for validation, maybe to be seen, approved of, to matter as an individual, not just a monolith, and a desire to know that if I follow all the rules, that I get the promise on the other side, just like anyone else. And by anyone else, I mean anyone else who is white.
Wow, that is deep. That's profound. And that was a great question. What made you even think to put that in the book? Because I don't think a Black person ever thought about, what does it feel like to be Black?
Right. Right. That was exactly the reason why I wanted to put it in the book. I wanted to write a human story. And I think we get so caught up in these labels of Black, white, and race, and it causes us to detach from the fact that we are talking about human beings. And I think as Black people, we have had a history of asserting or having to assert, or needing to assert on a continuous basis our humanity. And so I wanted to center that humanity where it was unquestionable. And as part of that, being a human being and living the experience of Blackness, it's an experience. It's a label that someone's casting upon you, but you're a human being, and human beings have feelings. This experience results in feelings. So in centering the humanity, I had to break it down like that in the story and give Tabitha an opportunity to express her humanity and say, this is how this experience feels to me. And I think it doesn't happen often, and maybe never in society, but that's what fiction's for. So these characters, as an author, you get to push them further than most people would have the courage to go in everyday life, and, get to see what unfolds. So,
and I really like that in the way that you just, broke that down. So was that kind of like the attorney side of you that came up with that to drill down, to ask that other deeper question? That was pretty profound.
Yeah, maybe so. I think I've had a lot of life experience. I've traveled the world. I've spent a lot of time with a lot of really interesting people. And, one of the things that I've learned from that is to never miss an opportunity to ask a good question. There's always something you can learn. So as an author, with these characters that I've created, I think, okay, well, what can they teach us? And what can Tabitha teach us? And to push for that. And what can her grandmother teach us? And, what do we need to learn from these people? So I get my characters in the situations where they have to push. And so that's kind of my thinking from my life experience, where the best things have come from asking questions of people that, maybe it would be a little bit strange to ask or uncomfortable, but definitely worth it.
Exactly. And I have to say, from what I've been reading through the book, you use each one of the characters in a way to be able to kind of ask or experience different scenarios. Mm-hmm. So you have Tabitha as pretty much our main character. Her best friend is Lexi. Mm-hmm. And her other friend, who she was in college with, was Laila.
Uh-huh.
And then we have Grandma Tabby.
Yeah.
And then Miss Gretchen, who is the wild child.
Right. At 90 plus years old, she's the wild child. Right, exactly.
So, but each one, though, especially with Miss Gretchen, I actually found have fond likeness for her, because the things that she have said are really true. Mm-hmm. But a lot of times we compartmentalize things, or we choose to see it a different way. But she was like, hey, this is how it really is. Mm-hmm. And if you would, before I go a little deeper, give us a kind of an overview of what the book is all about. What would make a person want to pick this book up and read it?
Well, in broad strokes, I wrote a book that I would want to read. And I think it's a little bit different from how you experience a lot of books in fiction, because it's not really written in a literary way. It's written to be an experience that kind of unfolds in your mind. So there's not a lot of flowery language. Yeah. It's more descriptive, things to bring you into the scene and just bring you into the characters. And so it reads more like an experience than, something that you kind of flip through as a book that's a little bit hard to get through. It's meant to finish and feel like you went on a ride. So that's the first thing. The story, it centers a Black woman and who's living a contemporary experience, trying to juggle profession, relationships, ambition,
Mhm.
and she's 33. So she's also having to deal with what is she going to do about family. And in this case of Tabitha Walker, some things happened in her childhood that really make family and her vision of what she's going to create as a family very important to her. So the stakes are pretty high for her in finding out at the very beginning of the story. We kind of meet her on her very worst day, where she, thinking her checklist is taken care of, she's doing her thing, she's living her best life. And all of a sudden, the doctor tells her she's got premature ovarian failure. It's a reproductive health issue, largely potentially caused by stress. She's like, "What do you mean I'm not stressed?" And then we go through this story of unpacking all the ways that she actually is. And that's kind of where this title comes in, Black Girls Must Die Exhausted, because, and the title and the meeting goes on a journey throughout the story. So it means something different from the beginning to the end. But part of it is that we're all carrying around this backpack of issues, and especially as Black people, it's
Mm.
important to unpack that. It's important to unpack it, take a look at it, celebrate yourself for having joy and celebrate and enjoyment and family and all the things that you are in spite of that. And then at the end of this story is meant to be a call, an inspirational call to live a life of fulfillment, whatever that means for you. And for Tabitha, when we start the story, she finds out her word is exhausted. And by the end, she's changing the definition of her word,
Mm.
and ultimately looking for what is going to be fulfillment by her own definition. She turns into a seeker. So this is a book that is entertaining. It's an entertaining story. It's meant to be entertaining, but it really is something that you can live into and is going to give you something for your life. It's not just, kind of empty fiction. It's soul food. So I really wanted it to be substantive.
And it very much so. It is an experience, and I've liked the way you've penned this, because it is, you actually can see this, every scene so far has evolved. It makes sense. Of course, I can question the one thing, and I kind of agree with Miss Gretchen, about the, as far as if a man really wants you, I'm paraphrasing this, if you're a part of his plan, he's going to do whatever he can to make you a part of the plan. And I guess the one thing that got me is that on the first date with Mark, and he texts her like he was a share ride. Like,
Yeah.
okay, if this is your girl, why are you not going to the door to get her?
Right.
And then as the woman, and as established as Tabitha is, it's almost like she accepted it, like, okay, I'm on my way down. Like,
Yeah.
oh, that should have been a demand. Come get me at the door. But it's interesting how how things evolve in the book. But that was one of the little things, like, wow, it's amazing. Here's a strong sister who has everything, but yet you still settle for this small thing, and accepted it, and would right along like it was okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I really would love to see what I've seen some mixed gender discussion groups and book clubs that have covered this book, but I would love to see uh, you know, a
Yeah,
two gender discussion,
right.
and because Mark he's got his own issues,
He
and it
got
gets
his own issues.
unpacked,
Yes.
and I think in real life there's a lot of Marks, and there's a lot of women
Yes, it is.
dating Marks, or having dated, or having experienced, or having come across for various reasons. And one of the
Yes.
things that was interesting for me in the story is kind of weaving in Tabitha's family history, so that a
Mm-hmm.
reader can kind of try to unpack that and see connections, or not, or
Just
really have, there's a lot in this book, and you can read it more than once and get different things out of it. But I really wanted to put a lot in there for the reader that was substantive and mirrored enough of life that you could get something out of it.
exactly, and it's there. I mean, you real life issues in a fictional book, which is
Yeah.
actually great. So it becomes, like you say, food for the soul. And if you really read it along with entertainment, but just pick up on all the nuggets, there's something that can be taken and drawn from it,
Yeah.
without a doubt. Uh, the title.
Yes.
What is the backstory of the title? How did you come up with that title?
Well, I was looking for something, a title I wanted to feel timeless, and something that could evolve in meaning, and maybe even tell its own story and go on its own journey. And when I came up with the idea for this book, it was in 2016. The environment as today felt very heavy, politically charged. There's a
Hmm.
lot going on that couldn't really look away from, especially as a Black woman. It was just everything. And the word that I felt that I just kept coming to and kept hearing and just was the word was exhausted. It's exhausting. It's exhausted. And so I
Yes,
wanted to contextualize that word it's got its own journey, its own story almost.
that's
And
true.
if
That's
you
true.
say it to a Black woman, it's like, yeah. Or, and so I wanted to contextualize it's a story about life and fulfillment, and the way to contextualize it, that's why it's got multiple generations in it. You've got Tabitha's grandmother and Ms. Gretchen with all this perspective. So when you say Black girls must die exhausted, it's explained in the book and how it comes across to Tabitha. But
Hmm.
the real the examination of the title is when you look at life, and in a full life, what is your life going to be? What is the word that's going to describe your life? And if you could just wake up in a moment and realize right now that the word you're living is not the word you want, what would you do to change that? And that's kind of the
Wow.
story that Tabitha's on. And
Wow.
she realizes her word is exhausted, and she goes through the process of changing what that is going to mean for her in this process. So I just wanted to bring that. It's kind of a wake up call. It's a call to adventure and fulfillment, to say as Black women, we need to do more than survive. We need to be thriving. And here's a woman on that journey. So that's the title. It's an acknowledgement at
Hmm.
first, and then a celebration, because in spite of all this, we still are magical, magic, and then a call to adventure. It ends in a very inspirational note. And the meaning of the book, even when somebody's read the book, they'll have a completely different meaning in their mind about the title than when they start. So
Cool. That's cool. What what did you learn when you started writing this book? You said 2016 is when you started.
mhm.
What did you learn anything through the whole process of writing this book?
I think I learned a lot about fulfillment, and
Okay.
the layers of, well, the courage that you need to get through the various layers of life. Like once you really start unpacking it, people will say, "Oh my gosh, there's a lot of issues in this book," and I'm like, "Yeah, there's a lot of issues in life." you So I
Yes.
wanted to have something that mirrored life, but was fictional and that could allow us to examine life, because I don't think we really spend a lot of time examining. We're just going through and experiencing. And so, yes, we deal with a lot. And I think it's just to take that time to acknowledge it and just say, I see you, even if you say it to yourself, and to celebrate what we're able to do in spite of that. And then to think beyond that, what does fulfillment look like? What does thriving look like? Because we've done a lot of surviving,
Mm.
and what's next. So I think this book has really this experience of writing this book has made me think about living authentically, more authentically. I started wearing my hair natural in the process of writing this book, because I was like,
Oh
okay, I
wow.
want to experience myself, what I look like, without, straightening or the weaves, and that's all fine. But I've never had the experience of me wearing my own textured
Natural
hair
hair.
and
Yeah.
learning to love that. So this book actually brought that to me. And I thought, well, Tabby's living authentically, that I need to do it too. So that was one of the things that did happen for me.
Oh, that's cool. That's so your characters. What did you have any reference points for your characters? Uh
Yeah, always. I mean, I'm the person that on a flight or anywhere I'm sitting, the person next to me is going to start talking. I have their whole life story within 30 minutes. And I mean, the
right.
deep stuff, and so I realized that I should pay attention to that. Like, nothing happens for no reason. Um,
Amen.
so I figured, I should take note of that. I'm learning something about humanity. I'm paying attention. And so with my characters, I really try to sew in, I call it texture of reality, figments of reality. So I like to bring texture to my characters by bringing in little bits and snippets from my mental scrapbook of people I've met, you know, conversations I've had, life story, just different things. So it's not one particular person that it would be the reference point, but different kinds of people and different people for everybody. And I had a, you know, it was at the end of my grandmother's life. She spent a lot of time in assisted living facilities. And so I was able to go and visiting her and see this other part of life and overhear these conversations and experience these people and their perspective. So I really want to bring that into the story too, and give Tabitha the benefit of that perspective as well.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, the big question. Which one of these characters represents you?
No, all of them.
Okay.
I have a little bit of all of those characters. I think that's probably the case for every author. I had to, when I started writing this book as a first person narrative, I was like, oh my gosh, what was I thinking? Because it was my first novel and I didn't know. But I'm like, now I see why people write in third person, because it is so challenging.
Yeah, so to take it away from.
Yeah, it's so close to the main character. And so when you're using I and this and whatever, I had to constantly remind myself, I is Tabitha's perspective. I is Tabitha's perspective when I was writing this book, and to really make sure I was able to give her own voice. But each of the characters, I mean, from Miss Gretchen to all of them, are little bits of me in there. And then they're themselves. Okay.
All right. I'll let you have that.
It's the truth.
What do you want people, you kind of talked about it earlier, but is there any one thing that you want readers to glean from the book when they read it?
I want them to have an amazing adventure, first of all. I want them to feel like they had an experience that they weren't even expecting. And by the time they close the book, like, just feel like, woo, I've been on a journey. You know, I feel like I know these people. And just really feel like the time spent was worth it, and maybe want to read something else after that. But beyond that, I hope that it becomes a call to living authentically, and also just a celebration of who you are as a person and all of the ways that you make the most of each day, and in spite of whatever challenges. So I want it to feel like a celebration, even that you take personally.
Cool. And it is. And what I've been reading, I found myself picking the book up more and more. I got it a couple of days ago, and I mean, it's really been nonstop just reading the book.
Oh, thank you. I'm so glad.
And I will say this from a male perspective, this is a book that a brother could still learn something from. So it's not. I won't say it's definitely not just a woman's book. It is a book that any gender could read, and there's a nugget in it that you could take something away from it, even from, you know, like you said, from Mark to Lexi's husband to Todd.
Yeah.
There's
Tabby's dad. I mean,
Tabby's dad. Yeah, I forgot about him.
Oh yeah.
So
Mr. Walker.
It's a lot of different things that in here that you touch on. That's 4 different men with 4 different characteristics and personalities that, you know, embody 4 different type of men, just like all the women. So it's enough in there that if a person really reads, and if they're a reader, a bibliophile who likes to read, and then also be able to learn something from it, there is something to learn from the book.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I that's what I intended, and I really spent a lot of time on character development and fleshing out the story. So I always had a hard time finishing books. So you know, I got really busy. So I was like, I'm gonna write something that you have to finish.
Right.
So that was the goal, you know, and part of that is just, I feel like people can get invested in the characters. There's enough meat there that people want to know how the journey goes.
Right. Yeah. And when I first read that it was going to be 2 more books, it's like, okay, I can't wait to see what possibly could be next.
Oh, there's some more twists and turns.
I'm sure it is. You know, so it's one of those gotta wait on bated breath. Like, okay, let's wait till the next book comes out to see what's happening next. When did you get the writer bug to really say, I want to write a novel? Do you think it was always in you, or was that, or it just kind of happened?
The novel thing just kind of happened. I've written nonfiction, and I guess I've always been writing. So my whole life, in my spare moments, somebody said, pay attention to what you do in your free time, just when nobody's watching.
Yep, that's right.
And I wish I'd heard that a long time ago. So I always echo that whenever I get a chance, because that is so real for me, that in my spare moments when I was just downtime, or even, checked out of whatever, I was always writing something. I was writing song lyrics, I was writing to-do lists, I was writing affirmations, I was writing intentions, I was writing, story ideas. And that has always been the case even since I was a little girl. And so when I finally got the idea that I wanted to craft a novel, it took me a long time to realize that, to even get up the courage to say I maybe could do this, it just seemed so intimidating. And then I
Yes.
realized, I'm a lifelong learner. I've learned all kinds of stuff. I can learn this. And I did. I set about learning the craft of novel writing and story structure, and really understanding. And it took me about a year and a half to do that, to get the concept of story structure solid, and to have confidence about it. And then this story started evolving and taking
Evolving, yeah,
shape, and
yeah.
it was ready. I'm an outliner, so I outline intensively. I do my character development. I have the whole backstory, pages of backstory for all of my characters. They're definitely fleshed out people. And then I really spend a lot of time focusing on the story outline and the story structure, so that I know what the reader is going to feel, where they're going, where I'm taking them, to make sure it's paced right. So I put all of that into it, and I started to feel really more confident about what I was crafting. I kept the reader in my front of mind, and the reader's experience the whole time. So by the time I was done, I was excited to read it myself.
Oh, that's cool. Well, one thing I will say, and it would, based on part of your response, I've told this to many people, and I want to just put it in the atmosphere now. God has put a gift in each one of us, and a lot of times we tend to miss that because, no fault of our parents tend to want us to go down a certain path, be a doctor, be a lawyer, be a teacher, whatever the case may be. But then it's that one thing that you will notice in a child as they grow up. That is the one thing that you really should hone in on. As you stated, it's writing. Oh, Jayne likes to write. So you start gravitating towards that. Or if Junior is scribbling and making masterpieces at 3, you teach them how to paint or draw.
I would absolutely agree with that. Yeah, I that is something I've learned in retrospect now. But yeah, I think
exactly.
Kids will tell you who they are, or show you.
They will show you. You see it. It's like it's innate. It comes out of them. It's like natural. It's a natural thing. And if you watch it, even at 2, 3 years old, you can see it if you're really paying attention to your child. And at that point, that is the beginning stage of doing that. Push it, and I don't mean push, but at least encourage it. And then by the time you're 20 years old, then you can make a living out of it. Because most people say, oh, you can't make money as an artist. But if you picked up on Junior at 3, by the time he is 20 and he's gone through all the training, he becomes the new Picasso.
Exactly. I completely agree with that. I'm glad you said that. And I do believe that God gives each one of us a gift. And I talk about that. I say, you get your best ideas, and people think that ideas fall like rain, and it's random, but I don't think it's random.
It's not random.
You get an idea, it's for you.
Yes.
And you get to decide to execute
it. And that one thing that's hard for Jayne, or hard for Tigner, or easy for me or you, that's hard for the other person, that's also the other side, because we're like, that comes so easy. It's like, oh, Jayne did it so effortlessly. But okay,
you're in the flow. When you're in the flow, yeah,
exactly. You pay attention to those things. People ask God, what is my purpose? And a lot of times the purpose is already in your hand. It's the easiest thing that it comes so naturally to you is typically the purpose that you should be doing. And
I agree with that. I agree with that.
You're writing becomes the voice of what you want to tell someone, of what they need to hear.
I hope that my book does that, and I hope Black Girls Must Die Exhausted. It starts with a bunch of really good conversations that hopefully will be enjoyable and necessary. So
exactly.
I thank you for saying that.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have been talking to a great author, Jayne Allen, in her debut novel, Black Girls Must Die Exhausted. The book is currently available right now on blackbookstore.com. And if you would, Jayne, give out your social media handles where people can follow you and also pick up the book from where you have it located as well.
So it's JayneAllen.com is my website, JAYNE. And as you can see it behind me on the side. And then Jayne Allen Writes I'm mostly on Instagram. So Jayne Allen Writes on Instagram, and you can follow me there. You can join my newsletter. I send out little tidbits and different things here and there. And my book will be everywhere books are sold. You can walk into your local bookstore. You can walk into Barnes and Noble. You can walk into Target. So I will be everywhere. And I'm so excited.
Awesome. I am too. I'm very proud of you. This is a great book. And I can't wait to see what is next for you. So continue being creative, continue letting your voice be read and heard through writing. And we will definitely be in touch with you. Make sure you follow us at blackbookstore.com and also pick up the book right here at blackbookstore.com. Thanks, Jayne, for your time. And we'll definitely be in touch.
Thank you for having me.